Welcome to Biblical Insights, and we start again at chapter 6, and this is the day of the Lord, as we say it. And the day of the Lord hasn't quite started yet, but this is a prelim leading up to the day of the Lord. And John, last time he saw the four horses of the apocalypse. I want to go through each of those horses of the apocalypse today in this short period of time. First horse he saw was the white horse. The white horse stood for conquest. It stood for victory. When the Romans would ever conquest or they would bring back slaves or their booty back again, the general always rode in a white horse. He would have the bow in his hand. The bow stands for military. However, when they fought against the Parthians, now the Parthians come from the far, far east. And when they came from the Far East, they came from a place we would call Iran. And they had a lot of time, a lot of hassles, a lot of problems in fighting the Parthians. And the Parthians all rode white horses, and they all had the military might of carrying the bows in their hands. So here we put ourselves in John's day, and we can equate to what's going on here. He sees what's happening. Now, the Parthians and the Romans, they decided to make a peace. They would come together and they would have a peace treaty between themselves. And this peace treaty was, of course, as we know, as a pseudo-peace treaty because it didn't last very long. And when they had this beautiful treaty, nothing was happening. Everything was going okay until, of course, John sees the red horse. Now, the red horse stands for death. And we know that death will come from war. And war is, the red horse was covered in war. War had broken out everywhere. Matthew 24 tells us that there will be wars, there will be rumors of wars. Nation will rise up against nation and groups will rise up against groups. And we know that the ethnic groups are rising up against ethnic groups. So in those days, in the days of John, when he was writing this, he could understand that. Today, we can understand it as well because the ethnic groups today are rising up against the ethnic groups. It doesn't matter what country in the world you live in. You can be in America or England with the Black Lives Matter. You can be in America with the Ku Klux Klan. You can be anywhere in the world. There's always going to be ethnic groups. In India, you've got the various types of groups that are rising up one against the other. In Africa, we get the types of groups. In the Muslim countries, we get ISIS and the Shia. We get it all the time. So that's nothing unnatural here. They will grow up, and that's the red horse. The peace is removed, and war has broken out once again. Nation has come against nation, and groups has come against groups. Even in the far west, when the Romans went to England, AD 61, they fought and they crushed England. The Queen of England at that time was Queen Boadicea. She took it so bad that she committed suicide. Then we carry on and we see the same sort of issue. The Jewish groups were revolting in Israel, in the Middle East. There was a lot of uprising against the Romans, and they were giving the Romans a lot of hard time. And one time that the Romans had so much, the emperor, the general he was then, was called to Rome. He was going to be an emperor. His name was Vespasian. And he told his son just to conquer the Jews. His son was called Titus. And Titus came along and they destroyed the temple. And they destroyed the temple on 70 AD. Now 70 AD was the day the Jews would have called in the Hebrew calendar the 9th of Av. 9th of Av. Or today they call it Tisha B'Av because it's the saddest day of the year. What happened on Tisha B'Av? What happened through the history of Tisha B'Av and happened on that 9th day of Av? Well, on the 9th of Av, the 12 spies came back from Canaan. 10 of them said how bad and how beautiful a country, but the people guarding it, they were like giants, and we dare not go into them because they will take us apart. Whereas there was 2 of the spies who came back, Caleb and Joshua, and they said, if God is on our side, then we can still take them. And this is what we must take from this today. If God is on our side, doesn't matter how bad the situation, doesn't matter how bad your circumstances are, God is on your side, you can still take it. The first temple was destroyed on the 7th day of Av. Today they mourn that temple. The second temple, which was the first temple built by Solomon, it was beautiful. Second temple was built, but it was enhanced by King Herod. It was also beautiful. It was destroyed on that day, on the 70th year, the year 70 years after Christ, 70 AD, on the same day. The city of Bethar, which was just north of Jerusalem, beautiful city, hundreds and hundreds of Jews were killed, and the whole city was taken on the 7th day of Av. Then, on 135 AD, we find that the Emperor Hadrian decided that what he wanted to do was to show the Jews and to teach them a lesson. Because of their uprisings, he's not just going to take the temple and flatten it. He's going to take the temple and dig it. He dug the foundations. He dug it to the ground. And he made sure he was going to do something else. And what else did he do? He created a temple to his god, the god of Jupiter. That was all done on the 7th day of Av, 9th day of Av. What else happened? Well, the next thing that happened was that the Jews were expelled from England on the 1290 after Christ, 1,290 years after, the Jews were expelled from England. We find that 1,306 days, 1360, the Jews were expelled from France, and in 1492, the Jews were expelled from Spain. And in Spain, they were given the choice, either become Christians or stay Jews. If you stay Jews, you still have to pay into the coffers. But if you don't stay Jews, we are going to take all of your money. And they did. They took all of their money and they financed the tour of Christopher Columbus. Germany's World War I started on the 9th day of Av. We find that the solution to the problem, which was the Jews were the problem. It started, that was the Holocaust. It started in 1941 on the same very day, the 9th day of Av. The names were changed. The province of Judea and Samaria, they were changed. The capital city of Jerusalem was called Aelia Capitolina, which honors Jupiter, saying that he is the alias. Alias is Capitolina. So Aelia Capitolina meant that the Jerusalem was now called Jupiter and was no longer called Jerusalem. They changed the name of Judea and Samaria, and that was called Syria Palestinia. So you won't find the name of Palestine anywhere in the Bible, in the Old Testament or the New Testament, because that name was changed by Hadrian at a later stage out of spite for the Jews. Then along comes this. It comes the black horse. Now, the black horse is the black horse of famine, and this naturally will come because once you have war, then you're going to have famine. And this is what happened. We see this all around the world, and John saw it happening in those days. Famine upon famine, people who were starving to death because of the various wars in the various places where he was. Asia Minor, Middle East, Far East. He saw the wars. He saw the famine that was taking place. We look around us today and we see the famine. We can see what's going on even in America, one of the richest cities in the world, and the famine and the homeless people and what's going on there. We look at the UK with the food banks and what's happening in that side. But here we see, closer to home, we see Africa. Africa has got so much famine. People are dying of malnutrition. And then we go across and we look at Yemen. And Yemen, it's just like skeletons walking about. Today, there are over 690 million people who are suffering from famine. The black horse was the black horse of famine, and it is happening all over the place. It's still continuing today. 690. The horse was told to destroy some crops and to keep some crops. He said you can destroy the corn. In other words, the staple foods. You can destroy the corn, but keep the wine and keep the oil. The wine and the oil from the olive oil and the wine for the wineries. The oil was used for luxurious soaps and materials, and it was used in a lot of things. And the wine was used obviously for consumption and also for medicine. Don't use those. Why? Because the wine and the oil were used by the rich, whereas the staple foods, the poor people had to go without. So you see again, the rich were over the poor, and they didn't feel it. Even today, if we look today and you see the starvation in the world, but you look at the big boys in the world today, you look at the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, or the Bill Gates, and they all are not starving. They have got plentiful. They've got plenty of luxuries. But the basics, the staple foods, they will be scarce. That's why the world is heading. The world is heading today for the economics of the world under strain. You see every country, they've made so many trillions of their local currency and to try and fight off this virus, this coronavirus. Eventually the countries will come to their knees, but something and someone has to come to the rescue. And that someone or something will be the Antichrist and the Antichrist system. And he will be the one that will start looking at things and start bringing things right. He will the one. You know, someone once said, I think it was the Rothschilds, they said, if you give me the control of the country, I don't care if you put a puppet as a king, I will control the land. And that has been their mantra ever since. The Rothschilds belong to a group of elite people called the Illuminati, along with the Rockefellers, along with the Gates. There are so many that we will get into in a much deeper time at a later series. They are the special enlightened ones. These are the ones, the Illuminati, the ones who shine. They get this from Isaiah 14, verse 11, where he's called the shining star. Hallel, that's what it means. Hallel, the shining one, the shining star. And they believe that they will shine because they are the elite. They are the enlightened ones of this particular world. But I want to tell you for sure that that is not going to be the end result. That is the way things are going, but it's not going to be the end. The pale horse, Revelation 6, verses 7 to 8, it can mean pestilence and death. Of course it does. Pestilence means an incurable disease, and death is the end result of it. We look at Matthew 24, and he just backs it up completely. Pestilence is contagious, infectious disease. Did they have those back in John's days? You bet they had. Did they have coronavirus back in John's days? No, they didn't. Coronavirus hasn't been out that long. You look at the virus before that, the Spanish flu, it was out 100 years ago. In fact, if you go back to the beginnings of flu, you can only trace it from 800 AD. So what diseases did they have? They had TB, they had polio, they had leprosy, polio and leprosy. Those were the diseases they had, but they were still diseases. They had famines, they had diseases, and they were rife in the day of John. But then what does John do? He takes up the next seal, the fifth seal. And remember, and what you've always got to remember, this is not the tribulation. All the stuff that we're going through, all the stuff, all the diseases, all the pestilences, all the mask wearing, all the famines, everything that we're going through, everything that they were going through, from the Apostle Paul to the Apostle John, the Apostle Peter, to all the persecution that they were going through, all the persecution throughout the world, all this time, right up to today, where we're told we have to wear a mask and we've got to keep indoors. We're not allowed to social distance. We have to social distance. We're not allowed to move around. We can't go to places where we want to go. All of this is not the tribulation. Jesus said, this will happen, but this is not the end. And then John, he takes the fifth seal and he sees it being opened. And what does he see? Well, I'll tell you what he sees, but I'll tell you next time. So until that time, God bless for now, and keep the faith. Amen.